I have a brief anecdote to share, which is in my company, CarEdge, we have graded car dealers based on verified out-the-door price quotes received by our AI agents that are shopping your dealerships.
Earlier this week, I went to the Auto Industry Fair Pricing and Compliance Summit here in Washington, D.C. And Dad, honestly, I was pretty surprised by what I saw. Can I be your insider and show you what I learned?
Well, I need somebody to be my insider, and it might as well be you, young man.
And I always, I've counseled many dealers, and I've heard more than once, I'll just wait for my warning letter.
Now, one of the things that surprised me, Dad, or maybe I should say didn't surprise me, is some dealers are just waiting till they get a letter from the FTC to clean up their act. There's a little bit of a, once we get a warning letter, then we'll change our behavior mentality in the auto industry. Not for all car dealers, but definitely I learned, Dad, that's one of the business strategies for these dealerships is take advantage of customers, and if the FTC comes knocking, then clean things up.
Yeah, absolutely. The thought here from many, many dealers is, well, there's like 60,000 dealerships, and they're probably not 60,000 people at the FTC working on this problem. So the likelihood of us actually getting a letter is pretty remote. So until we get that letter, why should we change the way we operate? The good dealers would say to themselves, a letter's coming sooner or later. Let's be one of the dealers that never gets that letter because we've changed as opposed to being forced to change. So it's a different mentality for some versus others. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me that many of the dealers out there are going to wait until they get noticed by the FTC and they receive that warning letter.
Yeah, and that was so interesting to me because there's a lawyer literally on stage and someone from NADA on stage talking about how that is a bad strategy. I mean, there's the clip that we'll show in this video of that NAD person saying, we expect to see more and more of these FTC enforcements actually happen. It seems very clear, at least from what I heard at this event, Dad, that the FTC, the NADA, lawyers in the auto industry, dealers, etc., all expect to see more and more enforcements. And ultimately, you and I know this, some of those can end up costing these dealerships millions of dollars. In the case of Lindsay Automotive Group, up to potentially $75 million going back to their customers who were taken advantage of. So the idea that dealerships have just been for years pretending like we can take advantage of people and no one will ever notice. And then when they do notice, sure, then we can clean things up. That was a little bit jarring for me to hear. I guess not too surprising, but it seemed like people were starting to take this very seriously.
Well, as well they should. And if I may, it goes back to a mentality that dealers have had for years and years and years. And when I say that, what I mean is, as you know, many of the automobile makers have programs for dealerships, hit sales goals, they receive extra bonuses. Well, in many cases, dealers have been known to fabricate sales that didn't actually exist so that they could hit those bonuses and collect that money. And the thought process was, by the time they audit us, we will have had use of that money for 2, 3, 4, 5 years before we ever have to repay it. And well, they're not going to charge us interest when they do make us repay it. So it's this mindset of everything's cool until we get caught. And even after we get caught, we're just going to pay it back and everything will be fine.
If you're not in compliance with federal law and or state law, you're actually not in compliance with your dealer agreement. And so that is an issue, right? So you can be terminated should you have an issue with that. I mean, I'm not sure the manufacturers will move that far, but you have to look at it. You have a duty to be in compliant. And truly, it goes back to what is the consumer experience? And that's what we're here for.
There was an interesting discussion at the Fair Pricing Auto Summit as well, Dad, about potentially losing your dealer agreement with the manufacturer for some of these issues that these dealers find themselves running into. The panel was pretty clear that that's relatively unlikely, but there could be a precedent set here where if you get caught by the FTC doing this type of stuff, not only would you be in hot water with the FTC, you could have your dealership removed from you. Like you would no longer be able to operate that dealership. So that definitely had some people's ears perking up. It seems like they are taking this much more seriously than we've ever seen before.
It is a signal from the federal government that they might not be willing to enact the CARS rules that they had come up with, but they are going to start enforcing the rules and regulations that are already on the books. It's like low-hanging fruit for the FTC. Everybody knows this is going on. So it's easy for the FTC to send out warning letters, enforcement issues, things of that nature, so that they can basically warn the industry, clean yourselves up before we clean you up. Because when we clean you up, it's going to cost you hundreds of millions of dollars in restitutions and fines. And if you just move forward on your own, well, the cost will be minimal.
Just because this is what I'm hearing, is now under the regulation or the enforcement statement, we have to include the addendums in online pricing. So what I'm hearing from dealers is, I'm just not going to put addendums on my car, but I'm going to have my salesperson at second pencil show items that I would have had on the addendum. And that's a conversation I'm hearing come up more and more with dealers. Because if I put it online, and not every other dealer does, then I'm not going to show up when they do car searches. I'm going to be page 2, 3, or 4. How do we get those addendums, sell those products, and not lose that online competitiveness?
Now, there were some interesting conversations going on at this summit as well, Dad, of maybe having really clean online advertised prices, which, to be clear here, we've actually already seen a lot of car dealerships add dock fees, for example, to their online advertised prices. But then there was conversation about salespeople then presenting customers on the out-the-door price worksheets with the all sorts of added on products. And it was really clear at this event here that there's still some interest to make sure we can sell those add-on products, but trying to do it compliantly. And as I sat there, all I could think to myself is, the whole point here is that the price you see online should be the price you actually get at the dealership. So there's definitely still some interest and energy because it's really lucrative to sell those add-on products. And as customers, even though we know that these things are non-compliant with the FTC, you see one price online and then the salesperson gives you what they call penciled ad or out the door price quote with add-ons, you have to be prepared to negotiate. So there's still people talking about that, even at an event about fair pricing. Well, how do we still make sure that we sell these add-on products?
Yeah, it seems to me that would be relatively easy because every one of them should be an option for the customer, not a mandate. So should there be perhaps a menu of available accessories and options that are available to the customer at the price that's already been discussed? And these are add-ons that a customer can choose. I think that perhaps could be a way to do it.
Yeah.
And it could be compliant in the fact that the customer actually selects the items they want and initials that those are the ones they have voluntarily purchased as opposed to being foisted on them.
Well, in fairness, I think the third-party providers need to be policing this alongside of this. And the reality is we all want to compete on a level playing field, right? And many of these sites will grade the pricing on the tools. So for example, if Sam is advertising with his dog fees, and I'm not, and I'm coming in $1,000 less, the tool will say, I have the great deal, you have the bad deal, who are they going to shop at? And then they become part of the problem, which is going to insinuate more people not cooperating with the FTC requirements. So that's some of the partnership we're looking at from them is, hey, if we're going to do this, let's all do it fairly and together the same way.
Now, there are also a lot of discussions about third-party platforms, websites like Cars, Car Gurus, et cetera, AutoTrader, even CarEdge to a degree, talking about the need for a level playing field. Dad, a lot of these websites have good deal, great deal badges, which ultimately incentivize dealers to advertise one price online that is unattainable to only then change that price when you get to the dealership because, well, the customers are finally there and they can try and close them. So there was an interesting conversation around that today and the need for third parties, including companies like CarEdge, to make sure that the advertised price is the real and actual price. And so I think the days of the good deal, great deal, all those BS badges are finally on the way out.
One would hope. I know many of the dealers out there feel as if, well, in order to be competitive, they're forced to advertise prices that aren't actually the price that a customer can buy it so they can get clicks. And I know that the theory is for many dealers, well, if we don't do that, we know our competitors are, and we can't force these third-party vendors to create that level playing field. In a sense, they perhaps could, since they're the ones that are paying these third-party platforms to advertise their cars. They could vote with their pocketbook and say to them, if you don't clean it up, guess what? We're not spending $5, $10, $15,000 a month with you to advertise our cars. And if the vast majority of dealers back out, I don't know. That could be a costly proposition for these third-party platforms, and perhaps they'll clean up their act.
I think we all agree the only reason that somebody goes to a CarMax or a Carvana is not because of the extra special used cars that dealers don't have, it's because of the process in which they acquire that car. So in the auto industry, we've kind of pushed consumers to those disruptors out there and said, hey, you've come up with a better way to sell a car to a consumer, in fact, delivered right to their front door with no hassle, and to your point, it takes too long to buy a car. Well, not a Carvana doesn't. So what can we learn from that?
When you make it easy for people to buy cars, to buy new cars.
Yeah, right.
Now, also at this summit, there was a lot of talk about Carvana and CarMax, and Carvana in particular, because they've recently bought 7 new car dealerships. And at one of those dealerships, Casa Grande CDJR, has actually become the #1 Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram dealership in the entire country, going from selling 30 cars a month to over 700. And there was a clear discussion about why customers choose the Carvana experience over the traditional dealership experience, because it's hassle-free and it's simply superior. So that was also interesting, Dad. I think these dealers are feeling a lot of pressure from Carvana. And also when I talked about our dealer grades and how A-rated dealers get 3 times the amount of engagement as other dealers that are not A-graded, I think there's some building pressure here and, quite frankly, competitive tension. Why these dealers should clean up their acts and start to operate differently. It feels like, Dad, it's finally happening, that the cleanup is happening in aisle 3, and the auto industry, fingers crossed, will actually be more transparent.
Yeah, you get the sense that this what's going on today through the FTC actions is bringing the dealerships into the 21st century, kicking and screaming, but bringing them in and having dealerships realize that a customer-centric sales approach is what customers are after. And that's why Carvana is doing so well, why CarMax is selling so many cars. It's people don't want to have to negotiate everything at a dealership.
That is why our CarEdge A-rated dealers are more superior to their peers that are F and D rated. Yeah, it's so clear that it finally feels like 6 years of working on CarEdge. Maybe we've had a little bit of an impact. Let me know what questions you had from the summit. Put them in the comments down below, and we'll answer as many of them as we can. It was so interesting, Dad, to sit in a room full of dealers, let them all know that I'm grading them every single day, and to listen in behind the scenes as to how they're thinking about what's going on with the Federal Trade Commission. So interesting.
Good job, you. I'm proud of you for being there, and I hope they treated you nicely.